The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. The Agile Coaching Network is brought to you by the Agile Alliance. If you're not familiar with who the Agile Alliance is, it is a nonprofit organization. It's done things like run conferences and events and other great things in order to help to advance Agile and Agile practices across the planet, which is kind of amazing if you look back, because we're coming up on some anniversary dates of when the manifesto was originally signed, and just to think about how prominent it is as far as, and actually prominent and also controversial still, which is amazing to me to still think that we get into the debate of is it one thing or another. And what you'll find with the Agile Coaching Network is we talk about the thing in this full spectrum. If this is your first time, you might find that this is a slightly different format than you're used to. We do have some regulars that come on the show every month, which is I'm happy and proud to have them. Jorg, Hendrik, Deanna, as well as Shauna and Linda as well. She's not here today, but all provide sort of a kickoff and get our juices going and get our brains kicked into gear about talking about these issues. One thing to note, it's not just about the people who've been doing Agile for a very long time. It's also about the people who are new to Agile, and your perspective is very important to us. We're a community of people, and that community, in order to make it strong, we need to hear a diverse set of voices coming through. So the goal of this is to amplify the learning and to build community. And we very much enjoy having you a part of that. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off some of the questions that were posted up onto Slido. These are the ones that got voted up either incredibly high, or they're new questions that I looked at and said, hey, that's something that we should probably talk about because it's really top of mind to what a lot of people are dealing with today. And so the kickoff question today is about self-organization. Specifically, can anyone recommend actions for helping teams that have been told what to do by command and control mindset? And how do we sort of help people into more of a self-organized mode? And with that, let's see, Hendrik, do you want to take a first stab at this one?
I can try, yes. So we're talking about learned helplessness, teams that have been told all the time what to do. And I've seen this a number of times. When you just let go, people are getting confused. So all of a sudden, there's nobody telling them anymore. And then like, am I really allowed to do this? Maybe I should. So they start acting, but they're always looking at their boss, does he look angry now when I do this? So yeah, this is a bit like the situation that we are talking about. But concretely, this learned helplessness needs to be overcome. It's a serious problem when you have an agile transformation. And what I think you need to do is two things. One thing is this team needs a coach. So somebody who's with them, who's helping them to amplify the behaviors that are related to, hey, you're now a self-organized team, maybe not self-determined, but at least self-organized. So you need to discuss in your team how you want to go about stuff. And at the same time, the second area you need to address is the leaders, of course, who need to hold back. And I mean, I've been a leader in an agile transformation, and I remember how difficult it was for me in the beginning to watch a team from the side. And then, you see things like, oh, hopefully they see this. Hopefully they see this, and they're getting closer to the edge, and you think like, oh my God, they are going to fail. When will they see this? And holding back to not jump in too early, otherwise you are destroying the learning, right? The team needs to learn, and that means they need to make their mistakes. It should not be fatal mistakes, of course, but they need to make their mistakes. And as a leader, you need to hold back. And that is something that leaders need to learn. And in that sense, also leaders need an agile education and a coach that helps them that gives them feedback permanently on, hey, watch out here, or think through that. So work with the team and work with the leaders so they can overcome this learned helplessness.
Can I ask a kind of a clarifying question? Because, at the beginning of your own journey, and I can tell you at the beginning of mine, having come from a command and control environment, as you were transitioning to your own coaching style, did you find that perhaps that you were being a little command and control in the beginning versus allowing self-organization?
Oh, absolutely. I felt that all over. I've been an educated project manager and project office manager and so on. So, of course, I had the experience I saw when things were starting to deteriorate. But again, you need to resist this. And I had a coach beside me who was slapping me on the fingers. That's when it started with language things, like when I started to say, oh, we need to ensure that and that. And then often that coach would tell me, okay, Henrik, what do you ensure? What do you deliver to the customer as the manager here? And I was thinking about it and I thought okay, well, I'm delivering Excel sheets and PowerPoint decks to steering group meetings or something like this. I'm not delivering anything to the customer. So I need to provide the environment for these people. But that was a learning curve for me, quite a steep one.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for that. Jorg, I noticed your microphone went live. What do you have?
Yeah, first of all, I absolutely agree with Henrik. And before you ask, I had all the same mistakes and I'm still in a crisis. Need to be very, very careful not to fall back on that command and control because I think it's a normal reaction to grab for the reins if you feel you know where that horse should be going, but be very careful. One very practical action I recommend is silence. Endure the silence. If you think you have something to say that directs the team, just hold off. And that is hard to do, but it's one of the extremely powerful things because most of the other people in the room will hate the silence as much as you do. So you just need to do this a bit longer than them to get something really happening. Make yourself unavailable from time to time from things that the team should be doing on their own anyway. That is as well helpful. And then give them trust and fun.
That's awesome. I remember I was coaching this individual. They were pretty much at the center of everything. And so one of the coaching sessions with this individual, I purposely delayed them from going to the daily stand-up. And they were as a cat, because they wanted to get there because they felt that the people would just stand around waiting for the individual to show up so they can ask them the 3 questions. And I said, no, let's hold back. They should be able to be fine. And we arrived roughly around 10 minutes late to the daily stand-up, and there was nobody there. And this person freaked out and said, see, they didn't even show up. And peeked over the head of a cubicle wall. And I said, how did the daily stand-up go? And the person said, oh, it went great. It was the fastest one we've ever had. And I just thought that was amusing how this person had no faith in the self-organization of the team.
Just to point out, Ray, you said something very important. You asked how did the daily stand-up go? You didn't put any pre-perception on them that they anyway failed. And right. You didn't control them. You were just curious, and that makes a hell of a difference.
It took a long time for my language to shift on that. Same with what Hendrik was talking about is, I grew up in a very command and control environment, and I can tell you that my mentors of how we got projects done was more of a bulldogging technique, and that's not conducive to self-organization, unfortunately. Deanna.
Henrik and Jorg's story were both reminding me of one of the first times I was coaching a manager, actually a CTO of a fairly small organization, but it was in the healthcare industry, so it was a really critical deliverables that they had. And after a few months of coaching, he called me one time and he said, oh my God. And I said, well, what's up? And he said, oh, the team is in the other room and they're discussing, I don't remember what technical issue that they had. And he said, I just really think they should go a different way. And I said, oh, and he said, I shouldn't say anything, right? It's like, oh, my work here is done, It was so awesome because he had gotten to the place where he was self-managing himself. around those things, and his awareness of it had grown, and so that's one of my favorite stories, and it gave me a guideline for future times when I was coaching managers for what to listen to know when they had gotten it right, when they had really understood how their role had changed. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is retrospectives are a powerful tool to help people move towards self-organization. And there's a particular activity for deciding what to do in retrospectives called Circles and Soup, where the facilitator helps the team understand which things they are experiencing are actually within their team control, which things they can influence, and which things are out of their control, and what kind of actions they can take for each of those different categories of issues that they are facing. And just gently but persistently noticing that there are things that are within their control and that they can just decide to do, and that that is a part of them being self-organizing around their own work, can be just a powerful life lesson in terms of work life for them. And so then there are lots of things that you can do in those various learning situations, like planning, sprint planning, or the XP planning game, stepping back while the team figures out what the work needs to be. And like you were talking about the daily scrums or the daily stand-up meetings, same, stepping back a little bit while they figure it out. And, being there in a fail-safe kind of way, right? Letting them fail, but letting them fail safely, not in something that's going to really harm or damage them. Right. But that's part of why we have those meetings in the Agile space, and the sprint review or product demo or whatever you want to call it is another opportunity for the team and the product owner to work together to present what work they have accomplished and manage that meeting so that they can get the feedback they need to make whatever adjustments they need. So those are, all opportunities for unlearning. Somebody's going to tell me what to do, and learning that we have more control as a team than we've had in the past.
Add another mechanism that is sometimes helpful, and it's about not asking for permission. Just if it's not forbidden, then go ahead and do it if you think it's the right thing. And demonstrating this is extremely powerful in opening up the mind. So very simple thing, instead of writing on a whiteboard, or if you're in a room without a whiteboard, grab the pen right on the window. People get really confused and say, is this allowed in this organization? And you say, yeah, is it forbidden? And just go on. That helps a lot.
So one of the things, just to build off of what everybody else has said, it's really about providing the space. And I think that this has been said in multiple ways, but Hendrik talked about having a coach or some kind of facilitator to facilitate the conversation. I really like the improv techniques of being able to use open-ended questions. So things like, how might we, pull from the group. What is stopping us from solving this? What would it look like if we did that differently, right? So if we use open-ended questions as a way to pull from the group and give them an opportunity to maybe flex those muscles that they haven't had to in a long time of solving problems, it's really going to help open up and, as Diana said, give them that safe space that it's okay. Let's think about this together. Let's collaborate. Let's figure out different ways that we can go about engaging in this conversation.
Agree with that. I noticed that Russ here, he posted a comment. He says, I've seen authoritative approaches work well as a start, perhaps a week or two. And what I found is that, you're still kind of crutching your way through the process of people starting to own their jobs and own their work. I do believe, though, when you're in extreme chaos, that there is a leader that sometimes needs to step up. But that leader doesn't have to be the traditional leader. It could be another member of the team. And my family comes from a military background, and one of the things that my father taught me about the way that the armed forces work is that if you're cut off from the chain of command, you want someone to step into leadership, and you're actually growing multiple leaders within the organization. So sometimes it's good that the traditional leaders, the traditional command and control people, you still need sometimes someone to pick up the stick and move it forward. Command and control of I'm sitting here until somebody tells me what to do. That's the stuff that we just need to get rid of within the orgs. Sheila, what do you have?
A couple of things I kind of agree with. I was in a position where I was the director for several development teams. And I can tell you that when you're coming from a command and control and being part of, coming up with the solutions, and rather than having the development team do it, there is this FOMO attitude. You get this fear of missing out, that you want to be a part of it and you want to put your 2 cents in. And it took me a while to get away from that and to just be like, okay, this is not my job anymore. That's not for me to do. And I stopped going to the stand-ups and had the development team themselves just doing that and having somebody from the development team facilitate that. And it seemed to go better in that manner. And then they would, from that stand-up, be able to say, here are the things that, we need help with without having that hindrance. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, and I think, Shauna, you were the one that was saying about the open-ended questions. A team that I'm working with right now that I'm coaching, we have done something like that with the open-ended questions, but the team is very, very shy. So what we've done is, prior to the actual retrospective meeting, is to send out these open-ended questions and let them anonymously put these things into a form, an anonymous form, almost a recommendation list of what they would like to see. And it's worked out really well to kind of start to move them out of their shells and to find out how to help them get to the point of not wanting to be told what to do anymore.
I have a clarifying question for you. So when you say that they're shy, is it just based upon personality, or are you coming from an environment, which I've seen a number of times, where there's low degrees of trust in the organizations? And
I think it's the low degree of trust.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's one thing that hinders self-organization, is that if I don't trust the environment, I'm going to get slapped on my hands because I did take the plunge and, kind of self-organize myself, then that becomes an issue.
Yeah, there's been fear because there has been so much command and control. I think what happens with these teams, this, unlearning this, part of the unlearning is previously their say wasn't something that was asked for, and now you're asking for their input, and there's a fear of, well, I don't know what to say. They're almost wanting to be told what to say about what they want to be able to accomplish. Mm-hmm. So there is that fear, that lack of safety, and doing this anonymous way that we've been going, we've slowly been getting them to realize that the environment is safe and that these retrospectives are a safe space, but it takes a little while. There are things that you have to, like, for me, it was getting that lead up to that and making them feel safe.
I think your method of anonymous and slowly building up on that, I think is appropriate and good. I think that's a really fine approach. Let's see, Mark.
I was just thinking, I'm sure many of us have heard the idea of behavior being a function of people and their environment.
Mhm.
And I've found myself thinking a lot about conditions for success more than activities that bring success. At a recent Agile conference, I heard a speaker talk about or ask the question, how do we know good leadership has occurred? And it changed my thinking to be challenged about, well, not here's what good leadership looks like, but how do we know it happened? And I thought about this difficulty in speaking up because we don't trust. And I think about how important it is to model the behavior we want and to be vulnerable. So as a specific example, if a leader can go in who maybe even is known as being a little command and control, and not just ask the questions, because I think that can kind of be doubted, right? In this way, like if they were shocked, now they get a question, it's going to take way more questions to get them to speak up. But what if the leader said, hey, I'm having trouble knowing what the best way to go is, and start with the leader taking the initiative to say, I'm going to be vulnerable, demonstrate vulnerability before we just ask the open-ended questions. I wonder if that can kind of contribute to creating an environment before, or I guess that's right for cultivating speaking up.
I think it does help. I mean, as a manager and a director in a company, I would always share my personal learning objectives with my staffs and my teams. And some of the stuff that was on my development, these were the things that you would find on people's reviews. I'm sharing with them those areas that I know that I need to grow in. And some of those were in the early days of my, Agile experience were about how do I not be so command and control-y? And I need help with that. And I was reaching out to my staff and my teams to do that and to help me with that and to call me on it. And so I agree with you on that. I think that vulnerability offers a lot. Joanne, are you there?
The one thing that jumped out at me when people were talking about shyness and the atmosphere of trust and stuff, it reminds me of a project that I was working several years back where I had an individual who didn't come to the stand-ups because she was very shy, she was very intimidated, and I think some of it was a lack of confidence on her part and not having that feeling of trust. She was a tester. So she often felt when she was raising issues or impediments that she was putting the developers on the defensive. And so she was a little more apprehensive in that environment. But what I kept encouraging her to do instead of just dialing into the stand-up, to actually come to the meeting. And so that face-to-face, and I know in these challenging COVID times, it's very difficult to do that. And I know there's lots of different Agile Alliance discussions, webinars and stuff on, how to continue to build your team's, atmosphere of trust in the remote times. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there from the perspective is how important face-to-faces are, and ask maybe some other team members if in this time of COVID, any suggestions they've done as far as to try and help get that shyness or the feeling of trust overcome in these more challenging times.
I think a lot of people are struggling exactly with what you just mentioned. I've seen, and others can comment on this as well, but I've seen teams that have been just doing more serendipity time, either serendipity on, say, a Slack channel, or serendipity of, I'm going to leave my webcam open and I'm going to just be working on something. You're welcome to come in and join and work alongside of me if you want. Coffee breaks, those types of things where it's not, I don't go upstairs just to my coffee machine. I might just turn on my webcam, and if anyone wants to drop by, drop by. Mm-hmm. I think those things, number one, I think we all have to get used to, and I think Scott Hanselman just tweeted this, we are now in a world of just 100% remote work. Everyone is. And he put, kind of pretensed it at the end with, and it sucks. And I agree, even though that I can be reclusive sometimes, the ability to just walk around sometimes and just look at work. I mean, the management by walking around was one of the things I enjoyed to do because I like to go see what people were doing. And today everything's hidden. And so I do believe that we need to invite people in to see what we're working on more, share more of our work artifacts and things. I think that makes it very helpful with that. I appreciate your comments. Joseph, are you there?
So this is coming more from the perspective that someone that's a technical lead on a developer team. But when, one thing that I find kind of useful is just really when you're looking at team members, think about where they're the subject matter experts and kind of, give them credit where due in, putting in the time to understand certain processes or, certain parts of, tools and things like that. So, in that kind of lead role, it's somewhat common for people to reach out to me and say, how do we do these things? How should I be doing this? And, one of the things that I'll say sometimes is, hey, I haven't spent nearly as much time doing this thing as you have. I can certainly take a look at this stuff, but really you're the subject matter expert here. I can show you how we have been doing this kind of thing in the past, but there's room for improvement. And if you could make those improvements or suggest improvements, let them know that that's valuable feedback that we want.
How do you encourage that from a self-organization perspective? So, I think that's very insightful of what you've said, but how do you, as a developer, encourage somebody to self-organize and do that with you?
So that's a really good question. One thing is, I guess one thing is just to see, what areas where they're motivated, what helps them, where their interests lie. So if someone is more motivated to work on a certain type of problem, or more motivated to solve a certain problem, help them move into that direction. And then other than that, just present yourself as a person with flaws and someone that hasn't put time into every problem the company's having. Kind of say like, hey, we're all learning here together. There's room for improvement everywhere, and I make the wrong decision quite often. So, it's good to keep me in check even, it's good, let people know, it's kind of getting rid of that command and control is, I guess, sort of a way that I think about it, is have that vulnerability.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anil, are you there?
First of all, this is my first session in one of these, so I'm really thankful for the session, and I think
we're thankful for you being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm just trying to, cull through my thoughts here, because some of this of all our friends here have said very pertinent aspects, especially in terms of vulnerability. Because recently, one of my friends, who also happens to be a coach, he came up to me and then he said, Anil, I feel like a patient who is trying to be a doctor. He himself has some issues, but he's at a coach level, and he's supposed to address some of the problems of the people that that are in his team. And that's a very pertinent statement, because not everybody is. Nobody is perfect. Nobody has achieved that Zen state, so to speak, and then be there to help everybody. So everybody is learning. So I really felt that it's important to share that feeling of vulnerability with the team, and that way it'll help to build up the trust that nobody's perfect, everybody's learning, and everybody will have the shortcomings in this journey that everybody is going through, and that everybody should be. There should be a room for folks to make mistakes, and that it's okay. That's what I have really learned on these times, and I think that really goes a long way when management also indicates that, and then shows that they believe in this more, and then command may work, like you said, initially, but it will not take you the entire journey.
Right. And I think that distance to power also it sometimes becomes an issue. I remember that some people. I never really had this problem of just approaching somebody with a vice president or even a president's title and having a conversation with them, because they invited me already to go do that. I think there's still some level of I don't know, is, how do you get to the we're both humans? Just because your job title is this, I just would like to have a discussion about X. And I think that just takes practice. I think it takes a little bit of flexing that muscle itself.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sheila, are you there?
Two things. The short one is in terms of working remotely. One of my friends had started in a relatively new position, and she was struggling with a relationship with her manager. And we kind of brainstormed and said, well, you really need to have a daily stand-up with the manager, a one-on-one. And, the same way you would with any other stand-up, just to maintain and build that level of trust with them. And that seems to be working. So what they're doing is a Zoom meeting, or it may not be Zoom, but it's a video meeting every day. And it could be just 5 minutes. But I think sometimes you just have to have more meetings because you're working remote, not less. Mm-hmm. And the same schedule isn't necessarily going to work. The other thing I wanted to say is it can backfire on you if you're in the wrong organization and trying to develop a self-managing team. Even before the Agile Manifesto, I would go into a new team and put together some kind of a straw man of whatever we were working on and go, okay, what have I got wrong and what am I missing? And if it's a hierarchical organization, people would be scared to speak up. Some brave soul would finally say something and I'd say, okay, well, I don't understand that. So what does that mean? And help me understand. And, what do we do to get it done? And it did help with morale, and it didn't take very long since I was new to build trust the way it would if I was suddenly changing my way of working when I'd been working with them all along. However, because it was a hierarchical organization, the fact that I wasn't going in and saying, you do this, whether it makes sense or not, which a lot of the other people in a management level were doing, made them think that I was a weak manager, never mind that everything was going more smoothly and we were implementing on schedule. I must be weak because I wasn't, giving orders. I was asking for cooperation.
Yeah, that one's tough because I've seen that as a pattern myself, that the question of what do I deliver as a manager is nothing, as Hendrik was saying earlier. I help orchestrate and build a good organization or a great organization in order to go deliver those products. That's my job, is to build a healthy organization.
There was an improvement in morale. There was a reduction in turnover. There was an increase in expertise among the team, and they were sharing with each other. And also they were starting to be viewed as a resource that other teams were coming to for help.
Which is all great things.
Yeah, and it all just miraculously happened while I was approaching things in a different way. But it was just miraculous. It just purely coincidental, had nothing to do with me.
I actually had one time I had a team where we made all these improvements and the team became more self-organizing, and the output was I had another peer come to me and say, what are you guys doing? You guys are doing so much better. And I said, well, how do you know? He said, well, we've been tracking you for the last year about how horrible you guys are. And these metrics, as you can see, that we've been tracking on you, which I didn't know that were there, we were suddenly getting better. And I said, that's great. Could you make sure that gets into my, my review, which would be nice. I think go ahead and pivot to the next question because we've been on this one for a little bit, and I'd like to squeeze in a few more questions. Somebody asked the question, why use Agile project management? And, I think that, for some of us who've used it as a project management tool for years, this one's sort of like, well, at least my belief on it is don't paint the world agile. Let whatever the business need drive what you are going to use as a project management framework itself. But Shauna, do you have a comment on this?
Sure. I think project management often is a very loaded term. I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So if the goal is to build out some operational practices, if the goal is to bring people together, create culture, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? I like Hendrik's model of fit for purpose. So there's a lot of different frameworks that you can pull from, whether you're utilizing Scrum or the Lean Startup method, or you could go on and on. But I think that as a project management tool, I think that's a very loaded term. And I like to understand a lot more what the organization as a whole is trying to solve for, so that, we can use the right practice for that.
Sure. Hendrik, your name came up. Would you want to dive in as well and educate people on what fit for purpose is?
Yeah, okay. In a nutshell, some people, including myself, for some time at least, believe that Agile is the antidote for everything. And as someone, you probably grow up and understand that Agile approaches have their place, but there's other approaches that might fit better depending on what context or situation you're in. So what I've come to is that I'm always saying, depending on the level of uncertainty that you're facing, the amount of knowledge that you have created, and so on, you need to find the right approach. And the approaches, usually I say it's like 4 main approaches, like design thinking, when you have extremely high amounts of uncertainty, where you have to really understand your customer, your business model, and so on. When you have found your business model and you want to add features steadily together with your customer, then an Agile way of working is really appropriate. Then you probably come to a situation where you are running and you have learned a lot. You have repeated success. Now is the time to milk the cow, basically, and increase profits. So lean thinking creeps in. And in the extreme case, when you know everything about your product and your market and so on, maybe even a Six Sigma or quite traditional approach might be the appropriate thing. So you really need to think about what context are you in, what situation you are in, and then Agile approaches have their space. And then maybe one more remark: agility means to be able to embrace all the spectrum of different approaches and use the right approach in the right situation and the right context. So that's fit for purpose.
Cool.
And then when it comes to project management, also, what does that mean? Projects for me are time-limited things with a very clear goal, where you say, okay, we need to accomplish this and that. And traditionally, for example, when you have infrastructure projects or whatever, the format or the organizational concept of a project might make a lot of sense. In software, usually, because there's a lot of uncertainties in software development, you can say usually an approach that is more like a program management. So you still use some project management expertise and approaches, but you run this rather as a program that is continually adding value, and continuous shipping is the right approach. And then you can think of a hybrid thing, where you say you have a time-limited thing, and we run a project, but because there's a lot of uncertainties, we need to have fast feedback loops and short iterations anyhow. So you can use a project from an organizational point of view, a project approach together with an Agile model. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily a contradiction, but you need to know what you're doing, and project does not necessarily automatically mean that we are now in the waterfall domain.
Right. Jorg, you've got your microphone active. What do you have?
Yeah, first of all, I absolutely agree with the fit for purpose. If you don't know what you want to achieve, then you can't pick the methodology. And one reason for me to start with Agile was just because I couldn't control the uncertainty in any better way. And that's probably still my answer if I'm faced with a project, as Hendrik said, so somehow limited in time, available resources, and probably goals. Then something, depending on the complexity between Kanban, Scrum, whatever Agile method, is still my pick, because I haven't yet found something better. And that's the learning approach, actually. There is no finite reason. If there's something better, use something better, and always be open for that improvement. But as long as that is what works for you, great, enjoy it and make it better.
So one of the things that people talk about
with project management and kind of give it a bad name is like, oh, we should think about products versus projects. You know, projects are these ill-defined things, but products have outcomes. And I actually think that that's kind of splitting hairs in some sense. If I have a project, even if it's ill-defined and it's not, I can still employ Agile techniques in order to get it going and to keep it going and to have it end. You know, so building a backlog of things and understanding that a project sometimes have trouble with beginning, middles, and ends, you can still employ Agile practices, whether it's a Kanban or a Scrum Light. But I think that the other thing that we haven't really talked about is that people give projects a bad rap and say we should be thinking about products, but I'm not sure that that's always the case. So, you know, even if I'm doing something that maybe is funded like a project for a year, I still can benefit from feedback along the way. Sure. So Agile project management is really opening up the possibility that the definition will be refined, as it always is, in my opinion.
Thank you for that. Let's see.
I would like to add one little thing here, and that is in the transition towards an Agile execution model. There is, of course, one problem, and that's a problem that we faced in our company, and that is the project manager were a bit the incarnation of command and control. So when you move into an Agile setup and you want to try to run Agile projects, you might have a problem with the profession of project managers. So for us, it was a hard work to first of all, re-educate some of the project managers into other roles. Some became product owners or some became Scrum Masters and so on. And we kept a few project managers who had, just from their nature and their attitude, they were more leaning towards the Agile mindset already before in their project management approach. And those we were using for the Agile projects, the few that we were running still. So that's maybe another thing I would recommend to consider. Who do you put on top of an Agile project? It should maybe not be someone who has been all their life running waterfall projects.
and loves their Gantt charts. And loves their Gantt charts.
Yeah, exactly.
Loves their Gantt charts, and whoever uses still Microsoft Project. Gauri, hopefully I got your name correctly.
Yeah, correct.
Good. So why would you use Agile and Agile project management?
Yeah, so basically to put it in one line, I say if you want to improve synchronization and alignment between the teams and between the people, and also to create a sense of ownership and accountability by all involved in the project, you have to think of Agile, because Agile provides mechanism for us to take ownership and also have accountability.
Okay, I agree with all of those things. I like the way that you did the framing too, which is it's more than just the delivery of the product, but it's also about how the people interact and work together, which I think is really good. Thank you for that. Ron, are you there?
So I think I'd just put it kind of simply. The benefit of Agile is that it creates that transparency, and you're using visual cues and empirical progress tracking, so that it creates a sense of shared responsibility. Whereas in a traditional project management mode, you typically have the single neck to wring, which is the project manager, who has built a plan based on what they know with a series of sequences and dependencies, and doesn't really take into account life and those things that happen that prevent things from happening on the date that you envisioned it was going to happen. If you just track the work you're going to do as it happens and talk about why things aren't happening the way you think they could be and make improvements within the team, I think that's where Agile really shines.
Thank you for that. Let's see.
Basically,
Go ahead.
Sorry. What I always say is the amount of bad surprises is the same, but instead of having a mega big bad surprise towards the delivery date, you have a micro bad surprise every week that you can manage.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that.
That's the Agile project.
Right. Marty, are you there?
I am. I think Ron somewhat stole my thunder, but I was thinking the one word is visibility. With Agile project management, it allows you to keep some focus on the overall vision and the roadmap, where the teams may get kind of buried in the individual iteration that they're working in and forget the overall big picture. So by having Agile project management, it gives both the external customer, the manager of the organization, if you will, that view of where are we overall and where are we going next.
Fully agree. And we are right now at the top of the hour. Great conversation today. I'd like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank the regulars. These are always awesome. And I'd like to thank also a number of people who keep coming back to the Agile Coaching Network on a monthly basis. I'm always proud to see the same names popping up, which is really, really great. A couple things to note, from an Agile coaching and sharing experience perspective, there's a great sharing Agile experiences coming up on October 6th. If you go up to agilealliance.org and go to events, can go register there. This is, 3 coaches sharing their experience, and I think it's going to be a really, based upon some of the experience reports that I've read, some really cool stuff. Also, if you go to agilealliance.org, you'll notice that there is things like the World Agility Forum. We've got Agile India coming up, and a number of other things that if you are an Agile Alliance member, if you're a part of the trade organization, those things are absolutely free to you. So that makes your membership valuable. Typically cost you, a couple $100 to go do. Your membership actually gets you into that for free, which is great. Once again, thanks for joining, and I hope you have a great month. This podcast is provided by Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.